In this video, I'm going to give you a tour of something that's pretty exciting, I think, and that's the installation of some drainage tiles here on our farm. Drainage tiles are these perforated flexible pipes you see in the background. They're perforated so they have holes in them. The idea is you install a network of these. They're all sloped consistently to a certain outlet, and you drain the excess water from the fields. So about half of my fields are too wet, which means there's standing water in the spring and it makes for a slow start, cold, slow soil warm up in the spring. So we're going to fix that. I'm working with a drainage tile contractor. Lyndon Martin is his name, and his team, and he's got machines that are going to install these things. But right now it's early July. I'm going to take you back a few months when Lyndon was out here before surveying the place for elevation, because these drainage tiles need to slope consistently in order to work properly. So he has a very sophisticated GPS thing that works with his four-wheeler, and he took a survey of the property, turned it into a drainage plan. We got a plan now, and now we're putting that plan into practice. So, but let's go back in time a few months, and I'll show you a little bit about that whole surveying business. So it's May the 4th right now, and this is the beginning of the tile drainage project here in this third field of mine. It's the wettest field, and there's a lot of potential here for making it grow better. So I've got a tile contractor guy coming in there. He's going to be making a drainage plan. He needs to know how deep the soil is in different places, and that's why we have this little excavator here. So it's the beginning of something that I hope will help this place grow even better. I'll keep you posted as things unfold. So what's happening here is that our drainage contractor, Lyndon Martin, is driving back and forth across these fields. He's in the field on the other side of the trees there, but he's driving back and forth about every 20 or 30 feet with a special device that will very accurately measure elevation. And that pile of soil you see there is one of a number that have been dug. He needs to know the soil depth, because these drainage tiles need to slope consistently down. That's how they drain the land. They provide a place for the water to run to and to run down in the drainage tiles, which are perforated plastic pipes. So you can hear off in the distance Lyndon driving back and forth, and then there's the backhoe doing its thing. This device here, something to do with the GPS system that he's using. He tells me that it can measure elevation to within less than a centimeter in accuracy. So pretty impressive stuff. My next thing is to hear from Lyndon and see what he thinks he can do, because as I said, the bedrock can stop us. You know, if there's something to do with bedrock that's going to prevent the consistent slope of those drainage tiles, then that could be a problem. That could short circuit the whole job. So here you can see an overview of all the fields before anything has happened. We've decided to go ahead. The drainage plan looks good, but we haven't actually started to lay any tiles yet. So this is kind of the before shot. Any pathways and such that you see in the fields now, that's mostly caused by cattle just walking in the same place all the time. Here you can see some more rows of the drainage tile. This is the 4-inch stuff for the most part. There's about 6 miles of this that's going to eventually end up in the soil. 6 miles, and we're going to be doing 27 acres in total. So it's a lot of pipe. They're installed every 40 feet, which is pretty far apart, but it's surprising how well it works. And here you can see they've started in on some of the construction. As you'll see later in the video, there's a machine for setting tiles into the ground without having to dig a trench first. That's what you can see to the right here. It's called a tile plow. It's got a spool of the drainage tile on it, and when it's actually laying the tile, which is not doing right at the moment, that tile will come unfurled, sort of unspooled from that, and be put right into the ground at the precise depth required. And that's where the GPS information from the survey comes in. That tile plow there is computer controlled, at least in terms of the height that it puts tile into the ground. And that's kind of the genius of the whole system, taking that survey information and putting it into an actual elevation for the pipe. This tile plow is more impressive in real life than it might seem on the video here. It's got 550 horsepower. It weighs more than 85,000 pounds. And all of that is necessary because that tile plow does a very hard job pulling that plow point through soil, sometimes very heavy and strong and rigid soil, like you see here. Here you can see Lyndon threading in some of the 4-inch drainage tile into the actual part that will put it down into the ground. It kind of goes over a pulley, which is what he's working on now, and it will eventually go down right to the tip of that plow point. So that's where the tile gets deposited. Here you can see this tractor here delivers the rolls of tile out to the tile plow as needed. And if you saw at the front, there were some discs. They do use those discs to level out some of the soil. Here's a closer view. Tremendous horsepower here. The tracks, as you can see, they have great big paddles on them so that they can grip well enough to do what you're seeing here. The tile here is probably 3 feet, 4 feet down maybe. And this is heavy soil too, and this sod has not been broken up in living memory in at least 50 or 60 years. So it's about as hard as ground gets, and this rig has no trouble moving right through. This is something of an interesting angle because you actually get to see the plow part of things close up. Here Lyndon's just pulling it out of the ground. He's going to be going to another place now, but that's what it looks like. You can see the pipe going down over that pulley and heading on down to the bottom of the plow where it gets deposited into the soil. So he's just backing up right now to start a new run. According to a tile drainage plan that he made from that survey, everything was all mapped out, including the position of the tiles, and reality conformed to that plan pretty well. Now here you can see just how messy things are when it's done. If I had just left this, it would eventually settle down, but it still would not be all that smooth. I spent some time after the job was done here using a rototiller on the tractor to kind of clean it up. But this is the spot that you saw earlier. A lot of tile runs are going to come together in this one area. So this spot has the most disturbance. And it did take a fair amount to get it all cleaned up, but you can see there's probably half a dozen runs coming together in the same spot in this general area. This is a better view of all of the place where all the pipes come together into that kind of main outlet. In this case, the main outlet is going under the fence, which is just about where the soil stops. That's why the pioneers put the fence there and stopped clearing the land. And here it is under the fence, draining the bulk of the fields. There are 4 other outlets draining other areas, but you can see the main outlet here heading off into the fields. The big challenge we faced here, as I touched on earlier, was bedrock. You know, where I live, Manitoulin Island, it's a limestone island, and there are some pockets of great soil, but then there's other areas that have no soil. It's just bare limestone. We're kind of in between there. Most of the fields here have anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 feet of soil on them. So the issue was, could we maintain that consistent slope of drainage tile with the presence of the bedrock there? We didn't know what the bedrock was going to do between the test holes that we dug back in May, and the excavator here is actually scraping soil right off the rock. These drainage tiles are pretty well right on the rock, so we couldn't have done this without any less soil than we have. I was relieved and thankful that we did have enough soil to actually drain this properly. And here I am inside the cab of the tile plow. It's, as you can see, that's Lyndon there. It's kind of a hybrid device or a machine. It's certainly very mechanical, as you can see, but it's also digital. We do happen to be in an area where the bedrock does rise up. This is the area where we could not drain 1 acre. So the original plan called for 28 acres of drainage. We got in 27, and this is the area where we kind of had to lay tile up to the area of flat, shallow soil where the flat rock rose, up to but stopping at. So it's quite a bumpy ride in there. You can see when it's driving, that spool is turning because the tile is getting used as it drives along, and works quite well. Lyndon is telling me that he is the third generation to be in the land draining business like this. His grandfather started the business, and at that time, drainage tile contractors had to make their own clay pipes in order to lay into the ground. We do have things a lot easier now, what with the perforated plastic pipes that will last forever and do a fantastic job. So it's kind of a combination of the high tech meeting farmland and making that farmland more productive. They generally say you can probably count on 25 to 50% increase in productivity from wetland that is being drained. That screen's pretty important. It guides the all-important placement, or it shows the placement of the tile. So the green line is the tile pipe, the bottom dotted line is the rock, and the top dotted line is the soil level. We don't want to get any closer to the surface of the soil than 2 feet. So Lyndon can see pretty well, so to speak, what's going on down below and adjust things accordingly. But dealing with a shallow soil situation like we have is made enormously better by having this kind of digital information. So you can really put tile anywhere that can possibly accommodate it. It's surprising to me how accurately the tile installation conformed to that drainage plan. You can see there's a lot of precision here because the position of the tile plow is determined by the GPS as well. So not just the depth of the tile, but where the tile plow is actually installing the tiles. And it's kind of pretty, actually. There's some disturbance here, of course. It's got to green up and everything, but it kind of, looking at it from the air like this, kind of reminds me of the Nazca lines or something like that. There's no pattern to it, but it is interesting to see, and it'll be especially interesting to see how the fields produce better over the years. We graze beef cattle intensively on this pasture, and we have numbers, annual gain, for instance, on the pasture. There's 40 acres of pasture here. We're making full use of all of it to the as much as we can. So we're boosting fertility. We're doing rotational grazing, frost seeding. I may even get into some irrigation. Actually, I have a water source that I could use. That will come, but 40 acres. The record so far of annual gain from the grazing period of middle of May till the end of September is about 11,000 pounds. So the cattle weighed 11,000 pounds more when they went off than when they went on. I'm thinking we can bring that up to maybe 15,000 or so, just based on the tile work we're doing here. We'll see. Notice those piles of dirt that are dug out of the ground kind of along one of the runs? Well, that's where a connection needed to be made, some sort of a junction, maybe involving a Y, sometimes T's. Most of the tile goes in with the plow, like you can see happening here, but the excavator does need to do some work to clear the soil away to make the connections in the various junctions. So where the tile was installed is called a tile run, and this is pretty typical about what's left behind. So it's fairly rough. As I said before, it would settle on its own, but I wanted to smooth it, and I have since smoothed it. There to the left, you can see a drainage outlet that makes use of a sinkhole, which is a kind of an area in a rock crack where soil had been washing down, a natural drain, so to speak, and they made use of two sinkholes for outlets in different parts of the project. But yeah, lots of big, ugly chunks of sod here. This is the first time I've ever had land drained, so I didn't really know what to expect. But more experienced people tell me that this actually isn't too bad. It can get a lot rougher than this, but it is surprisingly quick and easy to clean it up once the earth gets smooth. I used a tractor-mounted rototiller and some chain harrows, and that did a good job. There you can see that blue protective cage there on one of the outlets that's in the middle of the field. A week or two after we had the tiles installed, we got a lot of rain, and it was very satisfying to see how well these tiles actually drain the land. The water was just gushing out of all 5 outlets, just like it was supposed to. You can see one here. This would be the most northerly outlet. I haven't lived with this for very long, only one heavy rain spell. But water did gush out of there even faster. And you can see the tile runs are being worked down. They're going to start to grow in. Everything's going to look great. And if all goes well, we'll have some more productive fields with this tile job paying for itself in the end.